afraid of Big Bird. He is. Mitt Romney is afraid of Big Bird, the childhood hero of millions of Americans. He's afraid of Big Bird, who poses absolutely no threat to anybody. How can anybody be afraid of old Big Bird? See, but Mitt Romney, he's running against Big Bird as part of his campaign strategy. And it's bringing bad results for him. No, seriously. He's actually afraid that Big Bird is going to come down out of the sky and go and just smother him to death. But for one thing, Big Bird doesn't fly. And for another thing, he's not even a real person. He's a character. Now I remember the only time I've heard of somebody else being afraid of Big Bird. There was one time a few years ago. There was some game show. There was this game show, and there's a contestant on there, or some guy. He was a contestant on this game show, and his mother was in the audience. And his mother said that the only thing that the son was afraid of when he was growing up was Big Bird. He was afraid of Big Bird growing up. So then, guess who made a guest appearance on this show? That's right, Big Bird. Now, I remember when I was back in my day, I had this pennant that had like the Sesame Street characters on it, because there was one time when I was about 4 years old, there was a Sesame Street thing came to Cincinnati, and we went to see it, and we got, as a memento of it, we got like this pennant that had a drawing of like all the Sesame Street characters on it, like all the Muppet type characters, like all the Sesame Street Muppets, those lovable furry Sesame Street Muppets. It had Big Bird, and I think it even had Cookie Monster. But I was afraid of this pennant because it had a drawing of Oscar the Grouch on it that really made him look scary. And we had this hung up on the wall right above my bed when I was about 4 years old. And it had this really scary drawing of Oscar the Grouch on it, because Oscar was standing there going like this, with a big scowl on his face. Oscar he was in his garbage can. He had a big scowl on his face like this. He was really scary looking. So I would take the pennant and flip it up so it was perpendicular to the wall so I couldn't see it, because it was frightening to look at that. But Mitt Romney's 65 years old, and he's still afraid of Big Bird. And now that's a winning campaign strategy. No, seriously. Now people are already talking about the Big Bird effect. There's something called the Big Bird effect, which is how it's going to affect Mitt Romney in the polls. And here's a hint: it's not going to be good, because Americans love Big Bird. People can't get enough of Big Bird. That if there's one person you don't want to run against, it's Big Bird. It's like he's not running against Obama, he's running against Big Bird. But I know what the response is from the media. The media says, but Romney won that debate. He did. Stop saying he didn't. No, I think when you run against Big Bird, it's kind of an indication that you've pretty much already lost. when you have to do that. So we call it the Big Bird effect. And who would have ever guessed that the biggest gaffe in that debate? Now I call it the Big Bird debate. From now until the end of time, I'm going to refer to that debate as the Big Bird debate, because who would have ever thought that the biggest gaffe in that debate would be something to do with Sesame Street? Who would have ever predicted that? Did you ever think that the biggest gaffe in a presidential debate would be something to do with Sesame Street? That's almost as if it had something to do with bubble gum or toilet paper or Casey Kasem. See, it's one of those things. You just never expect it to come up in a presidential debate. So, wow, I just got a whole bunch of new email here. And also, Occupy Cincinnati's 1 year march is tomorrow. So that's gonna rule. So Mitt Romney, he's the anti-Big Bird candidate. He is. His stance on the Big Bird issue has now been firmly established, and it's a losing stance. And meanwhile, Obama continues to move upwards in the polls. Gallup just reports that Obama now has his highest approval ratings in 3 years. So this is the latest on Big Bird. Man, Big Bird, he was cool. Now, what would the reaction be if he said that about Grover, or Sherlock Hemlock, or Sam the Robot? Remember Sam the Robot in Sesame Street? He was cool. Or Bert and Ernie. Or Harvey Knee Slapper. Remember him? The guy that always played jokes on people? He was cool too. Yeah. Sesame Street.